This is Joe the Cigar Tanner Swagger at PrivateCigarBrands.com. In our first video, I described to you meeting my partner Jorge Gonzalez Pardo in 2001. This young man has come to be what I believe is the best cigar maker in the entire country. You can judge for yourself, but I'd like to introduce you to Jorge Gonzalez Pardo, a Cuban maestro cigar maker. George, tell me a little bit about your history and how it was that you came to be able to be a cigar maker.
I was born in 1976 in Havana, Cuba. About 11 years later, my grandmother making cigars in the home, I asked her, "Mom, what do you do?" And she told me, "Cigars." And that time, I don't know what is a cigar. So she said, "I'm going to show you something you're never going to forget." And she showed me how to make cigars. In 1993-94, I became a cigar roller in the factories. I say 10 years, 8 years later, something like that. In the factories, I learned another techniques for perfection what I learned with my grandmother for make cigar for exportation. And I worked there not for too long because the government don't pay too much. Eventually, I come back to the black market where I learned with my grandmother. And I work in the black market for long. I make cigars in the street, I sell, you know. In 1997, I became soldier because in Cuba the army is mandatory. Everybody go to the army. 2 years. In 1999, I come back to the streets. I come back to the factory, Romeo and Juliet, and that time, before I worked in H. Udman, the biggest factory in Cuba, around 550 cigar rollers. Romeo and Juliet is a big one too. I have around 350 cigar rollers, something like that. So I make cigars there, become level 7. And the Cuban factories have different levels, level 5, 6, 7. 7 is the top. I become quick because I have a big background. So in 1999, I escaped from Cuba. I met with Joe in 2001. And after that, the rest is history. I make around the country many shows, and I try to make the best cigars possible.
Okay, George, in terms of the factory where you learned from, they finished the techniques from what your grandmother originally taught you, but then you talk about making cigars in the streets. What is the difference there? What is the process of making the cigars in the streets?
Okay, in the factories, a regular cigar roller make one cigar maybe for years sometimes. If you make a Corona, it's a Corona for 2 or 3 years. If it's a Robusto, it's Robusto forever. When I work in the factories, I make Corona, I make Robusto. I tell you, not for too long. I stay for short periods in the factories. In the black market, in the street, is another history. You need to have an extra skill. You need to make, if it's 25 Robusto, 25 torpedoes, 25 double Coronas in the same day. It's very complicated. Not too many people can do that because the size of the cigars is in the hands. So if you put one extra leaf, the cigars become too tight. So this is a big difference. Make cigars in the street and make cigars in the factories.
So you learned the techniques first from your grandmother, and then in the factories you learned from the teachers there. But where you really learned and got really good was making the cigars in the streets. Is that right?
The true is when I come back for a second time to the streets. Because in that time I have another contacts and I sell cigars for black market, but not for my neighbors, for exportation, for the people who come to Cuba by fakes, Cuban cigars. This is another kind of cigars, not like the cigars I sell in the streets with my grandmother. So I make different sizes of cigars in the same day with premium technique.
So let me get this straight. Originally with your grandmother, you made them mostly for your neighbors, but then especially after you got out of the army, you had basically a little company that sold fake Cuban cigars, allegedly, in the streets in Havana, Cuba. Is that right? And that's where you really got the great techniques.
Yeah, I make many cigars every day.
Now, why would somebody visiting Cuba buy cigars on the streets rather than buy them in the factories? I mean, they could go into the factories, for example, the Partagas factory, and buy cigars there. Why would they buy cigars on the streets rather than in the factories?
Mainly for the price.
Oh, okay.
Because in the factory, if you buy the cigars, on a box of cigars there, we're talking about $200-300 for a cigar, for the box. In the streets, the people can buy for $30, $40, $50 as a box. But sometimes the quality of the cigars in the streets are better than the quality in the factories. Because in the factories, the government don't pay to the cigar roller and they don't care. In the streets, it's capitalism. You need to make the best for sale. You know, for sell to the people who prepare the boxes. They have many people in competition to buy cigars. If I am the guy who prepared the boxes and I know different cigar rollers, I try to buy the cigars from the best.
Of course.
In the factory, it's another history.
Now, Jorge, I've come to know you not only as a great cigar maker of great, our primary cigar is a Toro size, 6 inches by 50 ring gauge, but you are even a true artist with the tobacco. Show us just a couple of your creations here in terms of what you've done with the tobacco.
I learned to make artistic cigars in Cuba in the streets because somebody told me we have a potential market here with the tourists for make something different. So I start to make this kind of cigars, like, you know, this is a troquet, a baseball bat. This one is a hockey stick, pipe, and many other things. So, you know, I have to pay the bills.
All right, Jorge, I think that definitely you have demonstrated your history here, and you have shown us that you are a true artistic maestro cigar maker. And we look forward to the rest of the series where you're going to show us the various different techniques of bunching and wrapping the cigars.